So as a start, our press release will be SME digital transformation through Vodafone one-stop shop hub. Okay,
Got
so
it.
this is our main press release, and under that we'll be writing through building infrastructure, supporting building infrastructure, managing operations and performance, CRL and BTL marketing, L&D and consultancy support.
Excellent.
So this is our main statement and press release for the project. Okay.
Great.
So our project category will be under SME digital transformation business. Why is this project important? First of all, SME is the biggest base in Egypt currently, and there's a lot of focus on the new startups in Egypt. And also, as a government, there is a huge support and push towards supporting the SME and this concept in Egypt in general. Risk of non-actioning this, it's a kind of opportunity loss to be leading the market in this perspective. And also, when someone start to think of having his own SME project, just Vodafone to come up as the first or the let's say the provider of a choice. Yeah. What is your desired outcome? It's part of the press release that we have discussed. It's one-stop shop for SME digital transformation plan. Strategic fit Vodafone and country direction in digital transformation in general. And in more details, what we were thinking of, for example, in building the infrastructure, because we do have the know-how and part of our support to our enterprise customer, we provide them with a kind of connectivity and DSL services. And for the in general for managing the operation day to day and performance, so we can break down this into a kind of a hub for tools and applications that can capture either performance management, scheduling tools, payroll services through one of the biggest products that we are managing currently, and we are expanding in it, which is the Vodafone Cash as a platform. CRL and below the line marketing, we use our platform in terms of SMS bulk, whether to be as a marketing campaign or notifications or anything for their customer base, linking them to our Vodafone digital app, and we can add a lot of features and advertising for those SMEs inside our app and our communication platforms. Especially the number of customers that we are having currently is we are reaching to almost 40 million, so which is almost half of Egypt population currently.
Whoa.
L&D and consultancy support. Currently, we do have the experience when it comes to whether technical, whether customer experience, whether marketing and insights, whether credit management as a consultancy. And this is one of the streams that we do have another subsidiary as a company called Voice, and they do have this kind of capability inside their operation, where they do provide consultancy services. So this is in a nutshell the entire project and how we can put this in one platform to be as a selection with bundling services. So customer can ask for this and this and that. So this bundle will cost them an X and so on. That's it.
Well done. Well done. That's except there's a favorite Arabic word of mine. I think it's mumtaz. I think that that was fantastic.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, that's correct.
So I would say, by the way, that took you 6 minutes and 17 seconds to present. That's not bad. I mean, if you think about it, that's a pretty concise, very short, precise description. I understand where you're going, and we'd like to make sure that the other teams have a chance to ask you a question. So for the other two teams, think of one question that you want to ask We need one per team. We don't need one per team if you'd like to ask a team. The one thing I would leave you with, Eunice, is this. You will also amass a new amount of data on SMEs and what they're doing, and that data can be sold. I know you're thinking that, but I just want to put that out there. You're creating a new data stream on information that you'll have on SMEs as you support them. Great way to get into that is data. Or you also have a data store that you can now sell. So it's a brilliant idea. Any questions from either of the other two teams? And we can think, you can hold your question, or if you come up with your question later after the program, you can share it back and forth with each other on WhatsApp. That was amazing.
I have one question.
Please,
regarding,
yeah.
I missed this part from Mu'taz. The time frame of the project was it's a long journey, or it's something that can be achieved in the time frame of 3 months?
Honestly speaking, with the current existing capabilities that we do have, it's all about having them together in one platform. So I think it will be 3 months. It will be enough to have this project live. If you know, Ayman, that we do have currently, we provide our customer with SDSL through our business solutions product streams. And this includes also our Vodafone Hub. This is a new hub that we have for our enterprise segment. Currently, we do have the capabilities in terms of L&D and consultancy with all the entire data and packages in it. I think the one thing, and I think Garhi can support us in this, which is how to provide the payroll services through Vodafone Cash platform. And I think, and this is what I've heard, that already we are approaching our enterprise customers to be part of Vodafone Cash base. So I think it's all about connecting the dots together in one platform.
Yeah, great point. Great question, Ayman. Thank you. Yeah, and time is interesting. We all talk about minimum viable products, and so getting it into service and then making adjustments, not having it fully done, is really what we heard from our speakers on Tuesday. Is just get something going, and the rest will follow. And it sounds like a lot of the pieces, Eunice, are already in place. So that's wonderful. Ayman, since you asked the question, why doesn't team 1 go next? How about you guys? And then we'll come to team 2.
Okay, sure.
Okay,
we can start.
go ahead.
Okay, for the working project statement, mainly our target is to have or set an omni-channel strategy for providing unified and seamless customer experience across all channels, online and physical. The project category actually falls under 3 categories: the customer experience and revenue generation and cost efficiency. Why the project is important for the business importance? We need to boost the customer experience, and it's one of the key pillars in Vodafone Egypt. We need to have a competitive advantage and reduce churn, and we need to be cost efficient and reduce the heavy dependency on human workload, either retail agents or customer support representatives. For the risk of non-action, it's, as I mentioned, it's a lost opportunity for the sales part or upselling part, and more customer churn risk. The desired outcome, as I mentioned, it's having unified experience and across all channels. And this experience, the customer, we can provide digital assistance for the customer in terms of tariff advisor, upselling products to the customer over the channel, or even during the waiting time in the retail store, providing predictive care for the customer to determine in advance he is calling or contacting the customer service or the retail store to complain about certain issue, and be proactive in that. Also for providing like a contextual gifts to the customer, or how we can change the products he has in hand now. For the strategic fit, as I mentioned, it falls under the main strategy pillars we have in Vodafone for boosting the customer experience and providing digital transformation capabilities to our customers. And for the 30 seconds project description, mainly transforming from the current multi-channel experience of having different isolated channels into an omni-channel centralized experience, and boosting customer experience and enhancing the upselling, the relevant or contextual upselling for customers. For the project timelines, actually, and we don't have clear direction how this is going to take, but as I mentioned, it needs like a technical enablers to have all the channels refactored and integrated with each other. This will be the baseline, so we are going to be able to build on top of it multi other ideas. For the key stakeholders, there are too many, but we have first the IT owning the platforms and channels and integrations. We have the customer care agents. We have retail agents. We have digital marketing teams. And we have digital marketing teams responsible for the eShop and the mobile application. And we have the consumer marketing teams, either the segments team or the CVM, for providing contextual products in the digital assistance we are going to provide. I believe this is all we have for now.
That was fantastic. And that took you 5 minutes and 10 seconds. And I gotta say, I appreciate that you continued on. I know we had 2 slides, but we were hoping to get to this first piece. So it was fantastic that you got there and you got the rest of that information out there. Really appreciate it. You know, as you were speaking, I'll chat in what I heard, because you didn't say this, but I heard this statement in your presentation. I heard Vodafone Egypt is transforming with its customers to create a digital future. And that really, that comes out to me as a press release for your project. So I'd love to let the other teams ask you questions about your idea. Any other questions from the group here? All of us are all in the same cohort. What questions do you have of Ayman and the team about their idea? Plenty of time. And if it doesn't come to you, it might come to you later. You can always put it in WhatsApp. All right. Well, who would like to speak for our last but not least team 2? Who would like to speak for them on your idea?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll start. This is
Go ahead.
Mu'taz. Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay. Our project idea that regarding to the pandemic situation that we have in the economy, we have an idea that we can create or initiate an application that facilitate for the employees their day-to-day tasks and consolidating all transactions and the meetings between the employees in the company. It will facilitate for him, for example, that the meetings that he has is started from his home, that if he's coming by a bus or transportation, which bus that he's going to use, in which time, and will arrive when to the office. The meetings, if he's going to attend the meeting either online or working from home or working from office. So if I want to have the meeting with my manager from such application, I know that he's working from office. So if I want him face to face, so I will meet him. So this application will facilitate the cooperation and the interacting between the full company employees. Why this project important? Because it will facilitate our daily tasks, organize all tasks, saving time and effort. Risk of non-action. We will have multi-source of data, so this may do some confusion and less focus. What the desired outcome, an application that will interface for all employees' life aspects. a strategic fit, as long as we, as a Vodafone, our direction is to automate automate our projects, automate our services. So we have to start by the employees itself, that we have to facilitate their day-to-day tasks and business. So this will be strategically will get benefit for employees. 30-second project description: creating online application for Vodafone employees that consolidate all tools and tasks. The following slide, project timeline. Actually, we have different timelines for to implement such project. For example, for the integration and the communication with the stakeholders, because we have a number of stakeholders. We'll brief in the following point. So it will take from us about 2 months. Briefing designs will take 2 weeks, and outputs for the design, it will take about 2 months. Then cascading such final design to the stakeholders. Then the implementation itself, it may take about 5 months. Then we will have testing and hypercare, and then training and sharing knowledge for the employees. And stakeholders, of course, number one, the technology that they, and supply chain, that they are going to select the sufficient vendor who can fulfill all our requirements, and all the other stakeholders, all the other departments, because such application will also show all the interactions between, for example, business case between finance and marketing, technology and business. So such application will interact with all the departments in the company. So the stakeholders will be huge. Steps taken so far: vendor assessment, that we're assessing the vendor who can design and implement such application. And our next step, to choose such vendor and fulfill our requirements. Assistance needed, of course, PMO to manage the project from with the stakeholders and technology team. That's all.
Shukran, that was fantastic. That was terrific. Thank you very much for sharing that. When you were speaking, I thought of something as you started, and I'm putting it into the chat right now. Vodafone Egypt is helping you transform hard work into smart work, because you're talking about this efficiency and this effectiveness that you can deliver through as a digital provider that people aren't considering right now, and getting the vendor to come in early and getting that vendor buy-in is going to be key. So thank you very much for sharing that. That was a terrific presentation. Any questions from the other two teams? We have about, by the way, that took you exactly 5 minutes, right at 5 minutes to deliver that. 5 minutes and about 40 seconds to deliver that. That's really good for all the details you had in there. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody want to ask a question of Motaz and the team?
Just a quick one,
Sure.
Motaz. I know that we might be having a kind of I wouldn't say that this kind of methodology inside our company, but we do have the tools and application, but I think it's in silos. So, for example, if we look at the HR, there is a lot of things that has been transformed to a digital concept. It might not be the best thing that we are having, but it's there. I think it needs a kind of a push in terms of new ideas and what exactly you have mentioned. For the transportation part, I think there is a tool or application that we're using currently, which is the Vodafone Bus or V-Bus, I think. So my question is, how do you think this will go through as a new idea, and how this will be? I don't want to say it can be accepted, but people might say that this already exists, because when it comes to efficiency, people tend to resist a bit, acknowledging that we do have an inefficiency inside our organization. What do you think?
Yes, I think that we may have an application that may use in Vodafone. I don't want to say it's nearly to our initiative, but because we are searching for one application consolidating everything. For example, nowadays I'm doing a project. I'm contributing with the finance operations that we are implementing a digitalized way of publishing our figures in the closing each month. Okay, such publishing the figures, it's an automated tool that we can import our numbers in a tool to show our figures to the stakeholders, for example, for the business or the commercial team. Okay, but for example, if the sales team wants to see our figures or other area team, so our application is to consolidate all the projects and all the tasks and all the interactions between all the company teams or the company departments, HR with the finance, with the sales, with retail, with all departments, not or the pending tasks between all of such teams to facilitate our interaction. Aside, as I told you that, for example, I want to do a meeting with you, with Eunice. I'm going to look to the Outlook to see the free spot in your calendar to book you for a meeting, for example. No, I'm not. Our application will not allow me to go to the Outlook. It's on the same application that I'm going to see your free spot, and I will know that you are working from home or working from office, for example. So we are going to consolidate all our tools in one application. Outlook with Workplace, I think, with HR automated tool, with everything. We are going to consolidate all of this in one application to facilitate our interaction. Did I answer your question, or I answered?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And I would leave, this is a perfect way to transition to a break for us, because the discussions that you're going to have in this program are the most important discussions about project development. And I'm glad that Eunice asked the question, because this is the dialogue that we have to continue into module number 4. Because if you don't talk to each other about helping each other get smarter about our project ideas, then they don't get sharper, they don't get refined. Because as a small team of 3, we are smart, but as a team of 9, we're even smarter together. So I really, really hope that you do keep this dialogue, these questions, because the questions don't get easier as the project gets implemented. They get harder, in fact. So thank you very much, all of you, for sharing today. And we just want to say it was a fantastic morning for us, afternoon for you. We want to transition. We have one of our speakers in the next session is already in the waiting room. So we want to transition to give you 10 minutes of your own time to take a break, maybe a tea, a coffee. It may be that time to stand up and walk around. If you travel to San Francisco, as we have done, and it's where Vlas and the team our base is just south of San Francisco in the Silicon Valley, and you look across the skyline of Silicon Valley or of San Francisco, you see one tall tower, the Salesforce Tower. It's built by the place that Salesforce works, and we're going to bring some Salesforce experts in to talk to you. These are pretty serious speakers coming up next, and I want to give you time to take a break. I'm going to pause. I'm going to turn off my video. Please be back here in 10 minutes so we can get started with our next presentation. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to close your day out with a brilliant speaker. So thank you for everybody. I'm going to stop, and we're going to go on 10 minutes. See you back here in 10 minutes.
See you back at the top of the hour.
Okay.
Peter, welcome. All right. Clemson, I'm just going to step away for a short bio break.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yep, I got it.
Folks have just texted us that they're getting ready to join, so we can start when you gentlemen are ready.
Brian is our lead off, so I'll
Wonderful.
refer to him.
Should I just take over my my introduction and kind of start there?
Please go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Solis. I am the Global Innovation Evangelist at Salesforce, and my role is constantly exploring how technology and also society and markets are evolving constantly, and helping to see the human side of innovation to help businesses, executives, every single industry, you name it, to see their customer and oftentimes their customers' customers through a new lens, to see how they're evolving as a result of their relationship with technology, and to reverse engineer that so that we could make decisions that were not only in their benefit, but also helping push them or helping build relationships in ways that we just couldn't have done otherwise. So I guess in a way, using technology to actually make business more human and to invest in the relationships that maybe we might have had long before technology. And my stand-up comedy routine this morning is this is the only joke I have, which is that nothing says innovation like PowerPoint. So I have some slides. Let me get some slides for you, and we'll kick things off, and then I'll leave it to if you don't mind putting your questions either in chat or holding on to your questions. I'll kind of go through my ideas and then make sure we get to your questions. I've also shared here with the team that if we don't get to all of your questions, or if you have questions that you think of later, that I'm happy to record a video and make you have to watch my face again answering them. So with that said, let's just jump right in. So the presentation here that I've put together, just to kind of give you a little context, is before Salesforce, I spent the last about 20 years being a digital anthropologist, so understanding that human side of technology. But I was also an analyst, and that work specifically focused since 2012, 13, 14, the business side of digital transformation. At the time, it was a very technological conversation, and my initial report series helped shine the light on new business opportunities as a result of digital transformation as it relates to business transformation. And in that work, I helped lead the digital transformation of some big companies, one including Telstra in Australia, another one not necessarily in the same industry, but Nestle, and continue to work with Nestle today at Salesforce. And then also that led into this other series that I led, the first series, research series on corporate innovation, of which was sponsored by, or in partnership with, I should say, Capgemini. And that series of reports actually helped define how companies, big companies, think about innovation and also constant digital transformation. And I helped open up innovation centers all around the world, including work with Telstra, but also including work with retailers, also like Westfield out of Australia, and also Nestle, helped them open their innovation center in San Francisco. And so all of that said is that this is a conversation that we're not going to have just once. It's a conversation that we're probably going to have to be ready to constantly explore this establishment of new internal teams, parallel roadmaps, and lastly, a mindset that is okay with not being done in our transformation. I was excited to hear about the spirit of Vodafone, the work that you're doing, the aspirations that you have. About a year and a half ago, I was in London with the Vodafone UK team, helping them think differently about their software-defined networks and their go-to-market strategy, so that we could help Vodafone UK's customers understand how to build better infrastructure to help their customers understand what intuitive, effortless service looked like. The customer, the ultimate customer, wasn't even going to know anything about SDNs. And it was our job to help them see the magic of technology being invisible so that the experience could be transcendent. But what we're here to do today is find ways to earn customer loyalty. And that's something you never stop trying to do. And it's something that you appreciate, that the customer is not done evolving. You know, we weren't the only ones affected by the pandemic. They were too. And this idea of creating the future is just beautiful, because the future is something that will certainly not defined. It certainly doesn't exist in a playbook. And it's what we do together. It's collaborative. It's the teams. It's also the customers. And it's that, what's that old saying? The future isn't what it used to be. And that we experiment and learn fast. And this is something that I just want to take a moment, that every challenge we ever had in digital transformation in the past failed right here. And it was because we didn't give ourselves the space or the permission to fail. That we gave failure the old meaning and not the new meaning, which was to try and learn. Have a good idea, back it up with data, source it with maybe some customer input, and then keep trying and never stop trying, and keeping a dedicated track to that trying across all boards. And then lastly, the collaboration. Every single company I ever worked with on digital transformation did it with a steering committee or a cross-functional working group. It did it more than with a center of excellence. It was something that was accountable, that everybody had collaborative responsibilities and had an executive sponsor to move with permission, to do new things, to break things, which was more important. And then lastly, to see then what the construct for organizing around the customer could look like. And in every case, what we saw was not only business model innovation, but also operational innovation. So new models, because we're still kind of working from the models from the 1960s. And what that leads to is decades of mindset, decades of not just tech debt, but decades of just legacy debt, mindset debt. These ideas that in order to move faster, in order to try things, to experiment, in order to work together, we have to realize that we don't have to be bound by the same rules that we've always had, that we actually have to create new rules in the process and be okay with it. And this is why most businesses before the pandemic failed in their digital transformation efforts. It is because they were digital. They weren't driven by some greater purpose, some greater mission to be more relevant in a more modern future and to keep competing for that relevance. And innovation and transformation ask you to go against everything that you've been taught your entire life, which is to follow the rules, which is to work your way up hierarchy. And yet innovation asks you to bend those rules or even break those rules or invent new rules to move forward. And that's where we give ourselves permission to do something new and something differently. Because before the pandemic, we had essentially what I call digital Darwinism, defining the marketplace, which was that every new technology, enterprise, consumer facing, would have an effect on how we work and how we live. Understanding that and the evolution of the market, and then our place, our intentional place within it, not just one time, but over time, would define where we were in that digital Darwinism. And that term is something I came up with before the fourth industrial revolution became a reality. And now on every single front, we face opportunities that are going to continue to challenge us and also to give us new opportunities to explore revenue, service innovation, relationship innovation, and in the areas for you with 5G and IoT and field, there's just so many incredible opportunities that are going to continue to force this evolution. So the way that I think about it is that because of the pandemic, we have this new normal, and we talk about the future as this next normal. And I needed something a little bit more tangible to see about, let's think about my work, think about your work, and how we move forward together. And I call it the novel economy, which was inspired by the novel coronavirus, obviously, but novel, when you get down to it, just means new and unusual. We didn't have a playbook. And I think that's what makes this time so special, even though it's so difficult, is that we get to invent our way forward. And this is where we're going to survive, where we're going to thrive. Everybody reacted the same way, which was, oh, we gotta set up some work from home for, I don't know, an entire workforce. We have to figure out digital commerce and digital service and all things digital. So business continuity, stabilization, those things became paramount. But this is where we are right now. We are on the cusp of world transformation. Right? We're going to beat this thing one way or another. But we were on this trajectory, right? And now this vaccine is on the horizon, and we're going to come out of this different. But some things are forever changed, and the work that you're doing right now is actually going to change your trajectory. And this is what's so important. The things you do now, think about working from home. It wasn't on really your roadmap at such an accelerated pace, but you did it, and you had the ability to do things that you didn't know you could do. So what else can you do now, right? So that can further change your trajectory. The fact that we're focusing on customer loyalty, customer experience, that is the most noble cause of all. So we actually have the opportunity to beat even our own expectations, because post-pandemic, we're going to see some of the most incredible innovation that we've seen in decades. And this is what we're working toward right now, is that it's not even just in our industry, it's everything that your customer sees and uses that's going to define their standards for engagement. And that's why we have to think not just about digital transformation, but also innovation. Innovation in that it isn't just new to us, that it's actually innovative, which is always an interesting dilemma. So let me explain what I mean by this. It's essentially the idea that there's two ways to move forward, and we need both. One is iteration, which is we're using new technologies, new models, new processes to improve the things that we have today. That's one track. On the other track is true innovation, which we can simply define it as using new technologies, new processes, new systems, new mindsets to create new value. And those things combined leads to disruption, which is doing these things together that make the old things obsolete. And why that mindset is so important is because it is your customer's experience that helps us realize that the more we understand what they value, the more that we understand what they don't value, the more that we understand the experiences that they have in our industry and outside of our industry that define that standard that we're always trying to work towards. So you don't just compete against your traditional competitors. You compete against every single experience they have that continues to change it. For example, you compete against Apple, you compete against Uber, you compete against anything that changes the game. And so where we got into trouble before the pandemic was that we were constantly inward focused, or we're inwardly focused. Not a bad thing, we have to be. But what happened, and this goes back to the 1990s, things like e-commerce, the iPhone launching in 2005. You have Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and you name it. Every single service has actually been a revolution in experience innovation. And so what happens is we're here and we're trying to change here. Customers are here and they keep moving further and further away. The more that they experience these incredible experiences, and that creates this divide. The thing about customers is that we don't want to have to create a reluctant relationship with them where they have to keep coming over here in order to do something with us, and that they have to keep compromising that standard for experience over time. So I'll give you an example. This is completely outside the industry, but this is the point. In the Millennial Disruption Index, I found this completely fascinating. They asked millennials, who do you expect to bank with 10 years from now? Who's going to be your primary bank? And the top three answers were Google, Amazon, and Apple, none of which are banks. Keep that in mind. But in their mind, that's who they expect to bank with. And that sets the standard that innovation, technology, intuition, lifestyle, those are the pillars that they're looking for. And this is what gave way then over the last 10 years, for example, of the incredible revolution we saw in D2C brands, D2C services. And with every single one, they transformed their industry. In the United States, we have Purple, we have Casper, two D2C brands, for example, that completely transformed how people think about mattresses. Who knew that the mattress industry was ripe for disruption? Well, every industry is always ripe for disruption, and every single one of these brands are also going to be disrupted if they don't continually try to keep up with the market. And what that breaks down to, these are the pillars that I've always found in my research that drove my digital transformation research, specifically around customer experience, was what is it that they value? Well, they want relevant choices. They want immediacy because we all became impatient as a relationship with our cell phones. Convenience, accuracy, they want everything to be experiential, personalized data, right? We can do this. And they want everything to be integrated and frictionless. So if I go from this to my cell phone to the phone, I want it to be integrated and frictionless. I want you to know me every step of the way. And I want those platforms to be as intuitive as Google. I just do. And so this was, I called customers of today the accidental narcissist because their relationship with technology has taught them that they could have all of these things, right? And this is why you see, for example, this sidewalk in China. This, by the way, is just one of many examples all around the world of civic engineering where you see the digital and analog worlds blur together because we are one with technology. And this is a visual metaphor now for how we have to think about the customer journey. And the customer journey has to be this fluid, that we have to be mindful of how somebody with a digital brain will go through this. And how somebody who isn't a digital brain, which, by the way, this is probably outdated now because everybody as a result of this pandemic has a digital first brain, just had to. But the point is that they have to coexist fluidly. So your digital transformation, this would be the digital transformation of civic engineering in China as a result of rethinking infrastructure so that it's more fluid for users. And what happened as a result of the pandemic, and every country is different, but what every country shares is the human side of what the pandemic did to us. And I call this new generation of customers, Generation N, for novel. And this is a psychographic, if you will. It's also an epigraphic, which means that we're bound by common behaviors and now also common memories. And why that's so important is that we became digital first, but we also were consciously or subconsciously transformed as a consumer. This is going to be with us for a really long time, much like we saw people change after World War II, how we saw behaviors change, for example, in the United States after 9/11. this is pretty transformative. We all felt this. It's a somatic bookmark deep within, and that emotional transformation that we're all going through right now means that we're actually questioning. And please, don't accuse me of being too philosophical, but you can accuse me of being philosophical at the same time. This literally has people questioning the meaning of life. It's bringing families closer together. It's changing how people think about how they save money and how they spend money. It's reassessing values. What is important to people now? What is life going to be like post-pandemic? It's not the same as when we came into this before the pandemic. And a lot of my research has been focused here to help businesses create brand pillars that are going to be relevant in 2021, 2022, services that are relevant, products that are relevant, and then everything else that is going to cater to a digital first brain, but a transformed heart. What we saw all around the world, as you saw as well, that within 90 days of that pandemic, everybody became digital. We saw 10 years of e-commerce growth in the United States alone in that 90 days. Our own research shows that customers all around the world, business customers and consumers, want every single business to be digital first, to create new products and services, to expand engagement methods, to create or innovate in those products and services, to essentially become digitally transformed now and over time. Your customer is actually now telling you to do this. So you really don't have a choice. So you're on the right path. But why this is important is coming back to the somatic marker and also the relationship it has with digital first, is that now they expect you to understand their unique needs and expectations. They want you to be integrated for consistent interactions across departments. So that's systems, that's ID, which I know you're working on, and they want you to demonstrate empathy. This is something that is almost counterintuitive to most corporate cultures. And now it has to be accelerated. Emotion, understanding customers and seeing the world through their eyes is now at the top of this as a result of that emotional impact of the pandemic. This is why it's so important. Customers all around the world are exercising their power of choice now if they're not getting what they want. And it's concentrated, just like we saw with the pandemic. E-commerce accelerated, working from home accelerated. All of this is accelerated because it just is a unique once-in-a-lifetime moment where, for example, let's look at the United States. 73% of customers have already tried a new brand, site, or retailer because they could, because they were looking for that digital first, that intuitive experience, something that they could do from home, for example. And 75% to 83% of them said that they're going to stay with that new brand. So this means that customer loyalty is up for grabs, and that this disruption is going to play out in and post-pandemic. And these numbers are consistent all around the world. So the idea of experience, of customer experience, takes on an entirely new meaning. And I share this with you because in so many digital transformation projects I've worked on, we have to push forward in how we see or think about experience, because we tend to stop short. It is a noble effort for sure. Our research shows that 84% say that the experience you provide is as important as your products and services, but it's how we see experience. All right, here's another visual metaphor for you, that we make these investments in digital infrastructure, in touch points, in touch point integration, service innovation, and we give it to the market because it looks innovative to us. It's new to us. It's incredible. But when we look at it through the customer's lens, right, this is why I call customer experience the customer's experience. I always add an apostrophe S so that it forces us to see it from their perspective. It changes everything. It changes the dynamic of how We then see how they go through the journey, how they use our products and services, how they go through, for example, service, and how they feel at the end of this. And this is an opportunity, I think, for experience innovation to be the driver of digital transformation. So it's exploring the lives of customers through their eyes, what they value, what they love, what they seek, not just in our industry, but every industry. How they experience your products and brand, and discovering new opportunities to deliver surprise and magic. I have abandoned the customer experience lingo of surprise and delight. I want magic, because what is delight? And this really has been demonstrated time and time again to drive business growth. It's actually the heart of loyalty, right? People are loyal to things that they value. To the experiences in one moment and in all moments that they value. And this leads to greater margins. In fact, in my last book, I had found that customers who feel that they're going to get a great experience from a brand in every industry will pay up to at least 25% more for that product. And this leads to just a few more slides to go. What my colleague here at Salesforce, Henry King, and I are calling relationship transformation. It's essentially a human construct that gets added to the front end of digital transformation and ongoing digital transformation to reimagine then the entire journey, touch point by touch point, and to explore those touch points from a technology lens, from a people lens and a process lens, so that we are looking at it through their perspective, that we're giving them the things that they want every step of the way, and using this as not just as greater blueprint for what business can look like, but how we're incrementally improving the experiences that people have. The smallest efforts will not go unnoticed, and it gives you opportunity to then test and learn in safe, very safe spaces. And that's really what this is about. A touch point, getting back to the humanity of that word, is an opportunity to touch your customer. And that is human. People feel. That's what the word experience means. They react to that moment with a feeling. How do they feel in that moment? That's what you're designing for. Technology has an incredible power now to know customers, to deliver better experiences, and to improve those experiences over time, to reimagine the entire customer journey, and to rethink then our relationship with technology ourselves. There's the digitization part that we have to do, and then there's the digital business innovation part that we need to do. So there's improvements, but there's also new opportunities, new revenue models, new value that we can deliver. And that will always be driven by the work that you're doing around customer experience. And it introduces opportunities to measure that time to value, to measure that work. These are just some of the examples of what companies are measuring. I know we're going pretty fast. As I told Peter yesterday, I had to take out, I think something, it's like 60 minutes. When I was done putting this presentation together, it was 60 minutes long, which there's more to share with you, but I'll make sure you get a copy of this deck. This is a Telstra store in Sydney. It was a flagship store that we worked on that essentially transformed the customer's experience. They didn't do all their stores this way, but it was just one as a pilot. And they realized that what people wanted when they came into the store was to have more of an Apple-like experience and to have products featured, but also information featured, how all of these things work together. But they also knew that they didn't want to be bothered by a salesperson. They just wanted to explore. They wanted to go through this discovery journey. This is Target in the United States that borrowed from this concept to open up a test store as well, where just products were out in a garage-like setting, where you could put products on a screen and it would tell you more about that product. You could put multiple, for example, in this case, multiple phones in what they called the sandbox, and the screen would come to life with comparing those phones, which was fascinating. You had a card that you carried around and you could just tap it. Whatever product you wanted to remember, the comparisons you wanted to remember would go on your own ID card. Even when you walked into the store, it used beacons and your account, of course, to know who you were. And it would ask you, hey, welcome to Telstra. How can we help you today? Do you want to upgrade your phone? Do you have a problem? Do you want to talk to a representative, or do you just want to browse? And you could choose that without actually talking to a human being, and it would guide your experience moving forward. You probably may have heard that we have partnered with AT&T in the United States to reimagine customer experience from a 360 perspective. Much like the work that you're doing, for example, with One Persona, it's this understanding that AT&T and all of AT&T's property, which includes entertainment and sports, that we can bring this greater unified experience by transforming AT&T into a customer-centered organization and using technology then to integrate those services around that one customer. And something we could probably dive into much later. And I think, because of time, and I want to make sure we get to Peter, we have so much more here that we could go through. But I just want to leave you with this, is that this is really about you. This is about you together and how you challenge your own conventions and you challenge yourselves, not just now, but over time, because leadership is actually transformed as a result of this pandemic as well. We didn't all have the answers, for sure, but you're on the right path. I mean, we're here together, learning together, and just never forget that actually the work that you're doing today is just the beginning, and that this is an infinite process now. The customer's not going to stop evolving. We're on the cusp of so many things, not just 5G and IoT, but augmented reality is actually starting to gain its legs now, and that's going to transform everything when Apple comes out with its products in we're assuming a year or so. But even with Facebook's Oculus product that hit this holiday season, we're starting to see the tangible nature of this. We saw the rise of augmented reality commerce this year. With companies that are really pushing forward in terms of retail innovation, since they can't really go to stores the way that they used to. One company is called 3Kit. I could send you more on some of the research I did with them. But anyway, this is about you and how not only you transform your organization, but also how you transform your mindsets and how we see the customer's experience and how we take those insights back and transform it from their perspective. So thank you very much for following along.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Mark.
Questions for Brian?
Hello, this is Amir.
Amir, go ahead.
Hello. Two questions, actually. Thanks very much for the presentation. It's very interesting. My first question is, when can we call a company that is completely digitized in matter of customer experience? What are the benchmarks that should be measured against? This is number one question. Number two question, is the demographical or the customer value or the cultural things within a country would be a kind of showstopper against any digital transformation? Is it value based? Is it culture based? Is it age and demography based? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Let me tackle that last one. Make sure I got that right. In my research before joining Salesforce, I studied everything from innovation, digital transformation, customer experience, and every single one of those, the number one hurdle that every executive said that they faced was culture. And that led to my work in then understanding, well, what is culture as it relates to any one of these things? And it turns out that it's how the organization, it's sort of like the social contract that the organization has with its employees that says, this is how we operate, this is where we're going together today, tomorrow, and this is how we make decisions, this is how we support one another, how we don't, this is how we measure success. And it's all of these things that actually had to be transformed in parallel with the work that we're doing. So for example, I did a lot of work with a company called Gaping Void, which is a culture design studio in Florida in the United States. And one of the things that we learned in that research was, of no surprise, that culture was incredibly human, and that things like mission statements and vision statements and codes of conduct, how we manage employees, how we measure their success, none of that was a human. It just wasn't. So really getting back to that construct of, hey, let me ask you something, Amir, where are we going together? You know, why are we working together? And what does success look like on the other side? How do you want to feel along the way? And it turns out that that design, which is called a future motivating state, and articulated beliefs that we say this is how we're going to work together and how we're going to get there. Turns out that a lot of that design borrows from gaming and also from social network design, essentially social engineering. Fascinating stuff. So something that we could talk about later, Amir, and I'm happy to come back and talk to the team about culture, because that's its own conversation. To your first part, successfully transformed. I mean, I'm going to have to probably throw to Peter, because I'm going to be honest. The only companies that I have seen transformed have been in pockets, like Telstra, for example. We digitally transformed their service organization. We transformed a pocket of their retail organization, but the whole company itself didn't. I think the biggest, most ambitious project I've ever been tied to is what we're doing with AT&T. Peter, maybe you might have some examples on that front?
One of our favorite examples would be a little company called New England Biolabs. They make exotic chemicals, protease restriction enzymes, and so on that are used to chop up DNA molecules and things. They came to our Dreamforce event and saw a Coca-Cola freestyle machine, which is something that lets the customer mix the different flavor essences into a custom blend. And if they find something they like, they can then put a QR code on that and share it with their friends through a mobile device. And then their friends can walk up to any other Coca-Cola freestyle machine and say, hey, let me try Jerry's, special mix here. And they said, that's really interesting. Why don't we bring some of that thinking to our protease restriction enzyme marketplace, which is an interesting, jumping across the species boundary, if you will. And what they did was literally Velcro some iPads to the front of the refrigerators that kept those enzymes ready, and make it possible for people to just scan things as they took them out. And now they had visibility into something they'd literally never had before, which is not merely the gross amounts of chemicals being bought, but now they knew things about the combinations in which they were being used, and they could get inferences into the research protocols and start guiding pricing and product development with a much more informed understanding of what was being done. And the next generation of their products didn't have iPads Velcroed to the doors. They integrated this into their entire manner of engagement, and went from merely being a provider of chemicals that others could also provide to being a partner in research, planning, and optimization. And that was an elevation of their business value, profitability improved, customer loyalty improved, and the data that they began to collect was literally unique in the industry, because no one else had that kind of global visibility into the actual practice. And that was turning their product into merely the kernel of an information-based relationship. And that was a genuine digital transformation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Brilliant example. Questions for Brian or for Peter or both? Ayman, you're being suspiciously quiet. Ayman, you've got.
I have a question. It seems close to the one Amir mentioned, but how to drive or how to educate the customer. For example, here in Egypt, we have did many actions in the digital transformation domain. For example, through providing most of our services over the mobile application and so on. However, I still see the physical retail full of people. And when we ask what is the top reason for visiting the store, it's for bill payment. However, we avail, for example, bill payment over the mobile application. I mean, how to educate, how to drive our customers into our digital services.
You won't drive them. You will have to attract them. They cannot be driven to it. They cannot be pushed to it. There's a quotation often attributed to Henry Ford, which he probably never actually said, that if he had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said they wanted him to breed faster horses. And Steve Jobs was famously contemptuous of focus groups. He would say, customers don't know what they want until you show it to them. It is rare to find a product that was demanded by customers. Sloan Management Review called it, latent value. No market research told Mazda to start building the Miata. That was an act of conviction on their part, and it unleashed a demand for a product that focus groups and research didn't believe existed as a demand. And so, creating an experience that draws people in rather than pushing a service at them and wondering why they don't adopt it. There's definitely a yang yin here. And the traditional manner of bringing a product to market and trying to bludgeon people into trying it with discounts and whatnot has not been as nearly as successful as creating something that's a spectacular recognition of the need people actually felt rather than the activity in which they had been accustomed to engaging.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs, at the end of the movie Steve Jobs, where Michael Fassbender plays the title role, he says to his daughter, "I'm going to put your favorite songs in your pocket." At the time that Apple brought out the iPod, Sony had 3 different divisions competing with each other in the sale of MP3 players, and MP3 players were an established marketplace, which Apple entered with what many people considered an underfeatured, overpriced device. But what they had done is recognize no one actually wanted to own an MP3 player. They wanted songs in their pocket. And by visualizing the envelope around the device and creating a marketplace in iTunes that people didn't even believe could be made to exist, of all the different record companies giving you their songs for 99 cents a song, that was such a radical idea that no one else had even dared to do it. But Steve had this magical ability, to use Brian's term. Steve had a magical ability to go to people and show them something that had never existed before in a way that made them feel that they'd be left out if they didn't participate in that vision. And the next thing you know, 3 years later, there's a new word in the Oxford English Dictionary: podcast. We didn't call downloading stuff off the internet a podcast before there were iPods. They literally changed the language of acquiring and enjoying network content by realizing that no one actually wanted to own the device. The product was not what people thought it was, which was a piece of hardware. The product was meeting the need. I want my favorite songs. I want to be able to discover them, acquire them, and enjoy them wherever I please.
Yeah, true.
Thank you, Peter.
It's interesting to realize that people think of Apple as a hardware company, but if you took Apple out of the hardware business and just looked at the business of selling apps and music and services, that's a business with twice the revenue stream of Coca-Cola and a profit to Apple the size of Starbucks.
Yeah.
True. If I could just add one thing, and then I think maybe definitely want to make sure we have time for Peter.
Yep.
I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the brand, but it was in India, and they had a similar problem where most of the traffic was related to the need of in-person service, something they couldn't do through the app, or like you said, paying their bill. And what they did was they dedicated just a track of the retail experience to that, and did a massive PR campaign to essentially just constantly communicate the other things you can do while you're at the store, but just gave a dedicated line to these things that they knew a certain type of customer were going to come in and out of it. And what if I had to go create this, I would borrow from what I'm seeing in all around the world with click and collect or curbside, and how those new infrastructures are being built within existing infrastructures, so that they're dedicated and unique experiences that don't take away from other experiences. And it's used as an opportunity to highlight new capabilities that others haven't seen. And part of that is training as well, not just infrastructure design. So just a random thought to tag on to what Peter was saying.
Brilliant.
Okay. Great.
Amir, I know you had a question after Ayman, but I would love to give.
Not a question. Yes, sorry for this. I want to
That's
build on
okay.
what Ayman just mentioned. The customer base in Vodafone Egypt is like the pyramids, the mass and medium and then the top notch. What we're seeing is what Ayman just mentioned. A very good portion of the top customers are using the app easily without any kind of pushing or even a push, but to a very minimal extent. The issue is when you even mirror the requests of the mass segments or the lower tiers towards the app, unfortunately, the outcome is not as expected, despite having all what they could have asked for on a fingertip for all the requests. And it was based on their feedback and mirroring all what they would think about to have available on the app. I do not exaggerate if I say that we have like 80% of the requests or the demand is available on the app, yet they are still calling the normal channel in order to get their issues solved. And this is adding to my question: is it a culture? I mean, the country itself, the people itself, not the company culture, is a factor towards the digital transformation.
Peter Sondergaard, when he was still at Gartner, said that the old research asks people, what do you want, and attempts to give it to them. And if they aren't happy with it, you try to do it better. While the new research measures what people actually seem to be trying to do and give them what they want before they know how to ask you for it. And the method of delivering a product and asking people, how do you feel about the product, will let you do relentless incremental improvement of the product. And this has names like Kaizen and people who or Six Sigma or whatever. And relentless incremental improvement will not give you, to borrow Brian's word again, magic. You have to back up and say, wait a minute, what was the end state they were trying to achieve? And how do I get there in a way that they would never ask me to do because they've never seen that before? And yes, it's possible to relentlessly improve what will never actually be the transcendent experience that would delight them because they don't know how to ask you for that.
That is so good, Peter. There's, if I could add one more thing to that, this is a user experience in its most philosophical sense issue as well. So when you observe what Peter was saying, what it is that people don't know that they need, and that you use that as an opportunity for innovation. It's also the principles of UX are very human-centered, actually, and how that is designed. For example, Apple's magic is in its user experience. And that user experience, as I was researching my last book, was actually there's a secret sort of code of design within the organization that doesn't just play out into an iPad or an iPhone or a Mac. It actually also applies to the box design. They have a user experience team for boxes, and they had a user experience team for space, like in their retail stores. And so that mindset is also something that can build upon what Peter was saying in terms of new research.
Amir, you've opened up a very interesting discussion.
No, thank you, and thank you very much.
No. This is not the end, as Brian offered. I mean, we could continue a discussion on digital culture and what it takes to reach that. And I think we'd love to hear from Peter as well. We've got some time left in our presentation, and I know, Brian, you're going to leave us at the top of the hour, but I would just say that this has been, in my humble opinion, one of the most enlightening discussions around leading digital transformation that I've heard in the last 10 years. So thank you. I'm not taking anything away from Peter's presentation either, because what I just heard you say about Sundergaard, and I've got to look that up. What I'd like to offer the cohort is we'd like to go to quarter after the hour. Please, Peter, continue. And Brian.
If I can have until quarter after, that would be great. I've got some material to share. Brian and I agreed that it would be interesting, since the two of us were both going to be participating, if he could come in and bring you the yang of blue skies and mountaintops and the aspirations of what digital transformation needs to be. And it does need to be aspirational. If you content yourself with adopting technology and refining your processes, you will achieve many wonderful outcomes. You will measure improved efficiencies. You will measure cost reduction, and you will congratulate yourself on how well you did. To some extent, it's now my job to bring you the yin of orange and valleys and talk about some of the ways that this can go dangerously awry, and you can believe you're achieving all of your quantitative goals of your digital transformation while in fact not achieving what we've just been discussing. So if I may, and if I may have until a quarter after, that'd
Yes.
be great. You should now be seeing just a moment, you should now be seeing a Salesforce logo on a contour map background.
We do.
And if that's working, then that means I can proceed. Brian used the term magic a moment ago, and all of us who've spent any time in technology are familiar with the late Sir Arthur C. Clarke's third law that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, here's a very advanced technology, namely the Apple Watch. Brian and I believe are both wearing them today. It is definitely technology. It has a user interface. It has reboots you need to do and updates you need to administer, and it is an extraordinarily capable device, but it is very definitely technology. And you might say, well, what else could there be? This is a Casio G-Shock. My shark cage diving, skydiving, mountain biking, Peace Corps volunteer son wears one of these. It's solar powered. He never has to worry about charging it. It's radio synchronized. He never needs to worry about setting it. And anything that damages this watch will probably have broken his arm or possibly removed his arm. He literally never has to think about it. It just works. And this brings to mind Barry Gemm's corollary to Clarke's third law. Any technology that is distinguishable from magic is insufficiently advanced. And we don't set that bar for ourselves often enough. We content ourselves with delivering amazingly advanced technology and fail to remind ourselves that if the customer is even aware that there's technology involved, we still haven't quite gotten to where we want to be. We want them to simply have their need met and not have to read the manual to figure out how to do that. And so my job today is to bring you what I've called, this is a brand new presentation, no one else has seen this one before, the guardrails for transformation, which are to grasp and deliver to your management an understanding of the accelerating nature of change, which is a very different thing from merely saying we're going to change, to design an experience, and then from that derive the artifact that's required instead of designing the artifact and thinking that that's the product, and to measure the outcomes being achieved and the states of mind you're delivering, and not merely congratulate yourself on lowering the cost and improving the throughput of your familiar activities. And I'm available like Brian afterwards. And also if you want more insight into what leads me to have my opinions, you'll find me on Twitter at Peter Coffey. Other communication providers could certainly quantify the impacts of the pandemic in terms of enormous increase in the volume of gaming activity. VPN connections were one of the somewhat unexpected spikes in activity back in March or April. It turned out many companies were quite unprepared to do massive scale of distributed work in a secure way. That oddly enough, people were less mobile. That wasn't foreseeable after the fact. Volume of service call, volume of messaging, all of these were substantial impacts. And the question is, do we invest to deal with these in a durable way, or are they transient impacts? Well, Brian has already mentioned our extensive research in what we call the state of the connected customer studies that we do on a fairly regular basis. And the durable effects of the pandemic are profound. Brian's already mentioned a few of them. Companies now are being held to a higher standard of digital capability. People expect in a persistent way to be online more often and to have a different relationship with technology. There are already nuances on this. For example, almost everyone now has their children studying from home, and almost no one wants to keep doing it. There's been a 100% growth in remote learning for children, but a very small intent to continue using. While interestingly, remote learning for mid-career and continuing education for adults is not up by as much of a percentage, but look at how much farther to the right that is. Many more people, having tried it perhaps for the first time, plan to continue doing it. Wendy Redshaw at NatWest Group in the UK said that her 50 to 70-year-old customers have adopted online banking now to an extraordinary degree compared to what they were doing before. And they're saying things like, wow, why did it take a pandemic to get me to try this? This is so much easier. And the degree to which we've gone through a one-way door, and many new habits will persist, but others are only being tolerated out of necessity. And we want to be careful not to overinvest in the things that will not persist, and fail to recognize things that might not be as conspicuous now, but represent ongoing opportunities perhaps decades to come. This is not a project. We are accustomed to rigorous processes in which we do requirements definition, we do a deployment, we do an adoption, and then we sit for a while. And many of our Salesforce partners tell me the most difficult thing to do is to get a customer to understand that transformation is not a step change, that the outcome of your transformation must be ongoing transformability and continuous change indefinitely, as now change as part of a normal thing instead of an occasional burst of episodic disruption, except that even that middle curve showing continuous growth is not nearly adequate to capture the reality of exponential change. You are here. You are at this intersection point where you are making an investment and the people writing the checks think, okay, great, now we get to enjoy some return on that investment. And maybe some of the more ambitious are saying, no, we understand the market's going to be changing in an aggressive way going forward. Even they may not understand that red curve. And if I were to plot the volume of Uber traffic, the volume of Airbnb stays, the amount of memory in your phone, they would have this hockey stick characteristic. It is genuine, it is real, and it is continuous acceleration, which is a very different thing from continuous change at constant speed. If you're flying in an airplane at 700 miles an hour, you can still sip from your drink as long as there's no actual acceleration going on. But if they start banking and turning or accelerating, you notice, and that is where we all have to be. The degree to which, this is real in your own industry, of course, is quite clear. The iPhone, the first iPhone, was not even a 3G device. We've had an 1,100-fold growth, a 1,100 growth factor of bandwidth on the planet since the iPhone was introduced. It's growing at a 45% growth rate. And that what that means is that there's the opportunity and the necessity to collect data and to find insight in that data to generate the basis for customer experience. That data is where you learn what people are trying to do, as we've been discussing, the Peter Sondergaard quote, being able to infer intention and desire and not merely monitor activity. And you probably suspect this because companies in a very recent survey done by Splunk say, we know that half of our data is only being used to record what has happened, that we are not deriving insight into the next steps, that we are not treating it as a strategic resource. We're just congratulating ourselves on our ability to look at our rear view mirror at higher resolution, which is not nearly the same thing as being able to look out your windshield and see through the fog. And the way in which you engage with your volume of data is a strategic decision. Congratulating yourself on doing a better job of retrospective analysis is not nearly the same thing. And some things can be made much simpler. When people talk about AI, it's easy to forget that back in 1950s, Alan Turing said, look, all people want is something that can hold up its end of a conversation. Can you have an interaction with something and not feel that you're talking to a scripted robot? And the Turing test is a famous phrase where I can ask any company, would you pass a Turing test? Do you recognize the context from which your customer is coming to you? Do you understand their desires and concerns? And from that, can you recommend useful actions? If you can't do these things, then no matter how sophisticated your capabilities may be, you still come across as a scripted robot rather than being an intelligent partner in a conversation. And that's what people really crave. But intelligent conversation really depends on what you know. You can be a phenomenally intelligent person, but if you haven't read that morning's newspaper, you're probably not going to be able to hold up your end of the conversation. The US Air Force found this out when they were trying to apply AI techniques to predictive diagnostics and optimization of things like spare parts. They discovered the data they'd been accumulating for decades simply was not organized in such a way that machine learning could use it to do the things they wanted to do. And they worked with a Salesforce customer, namely Delta Airlines, to do a massive effort to reorganize the way their data was available to machine learning and prediction. And you might say, well, the Air Force, that's a very exotic operation. Well, our research with Deloitte shows that the typical brand needs to look in 39 places to assemble its picture of any single customer, which has led Forrester to say that constructing an AI-worthy data environment is actually a longer term and probably more ambitious project because of organizational barriers and silos than the actual introduction of the AI technology itself. AI is a very sexy technology. Data rationalization doesn't sound nearly as exciting, but without that data rationalization, there's no food to feed the beast. There is nothing for it to know, and there is nothing with which it can reason. And so an AI project that is not preceded by a data project is likely to produce a transformation of dubious value. Connection mandates customer focus. Customers will not accept that when they're, and we've already talked about this, about wanting to have that unified experience across the entire brand, because no matter how well you do this, no matter how well Moore's law gives you bigger, faster, stronger silos of superior capability, the customer doesn't care. That's cutting your cost. It's not giving them this. They know they can have this. They know they can be at the center of the conversation instead of every time they talk to a different piece of you, feeling like you're talking to a different piece of them. And the challenge is to overcome what's been called Conway's Law, that when we build systems and organizations, we tend to mirror our own organization charts. We allocate responsibility for different pieces of a project to the units we've already defined, and it is hugely difficult not to just wind up reflecting your own organizational architecture in the solution you bring to your customer. These 6 charts on the right from bonkersworld.net have names of companies on them in the original. I took those off. If you want to guess which company is represented by the organization chart of bubbles pointing guns at each other, I invite you to go ahead and do that as a thought experiment. Or the one at bottom right where the legal division hugely overwhelms engineering. I'm not going to offend any of our competitors by pointing out that they were the prototypes for these charts. But if you're not prepared to change your organization, or if you're not prepared to create skunk works groups whose job is to ignore the boundaries of organization, it will be very difficult for your digital transformation to do anything more than speed up the activities and interactions that you already have today. Are you looking at your solutions from the top down? When people are asked if their CRM, one of our core businesses here at Salesforce, when people are asked if your CRM is helping your business grow, they give a very different answer from if you ask them, is your CRM adoption being successful? If you ask, has your CRM adoption been successful? Well, you will have the EVP of marketing say, yes, I can track every lead. And the CIO, well, I've got a lot of databases, but at least we're collecting data. And the sales dashboard is wonderful because now I know where all the metrics are going. But then the sales managers say this is all great. But then you ask the actual salespeople, and they say, this isn't actually helping us sell. And that login rate that you're measuring and saying we have a high level of adoption, so the CRM has been successful, that's because we now need to spend 4 hours a week copying data from one place to another. And if you measure adoption by number of hours the system is being used, you will conclude that you're being successful when all you've really done is create what people regard as an unproductive and distracting time sink. It's terribly important when you measure the success of your digital transformation that you measure outcome and not just measure activity. Because in fact, and this is a piece that was done by Harvard Business Review just rather recently, the ultimate result was that the CRM became merely a system of record, and all of the actual work was being done in spreadsheets, where people had the ability to devise the problem as they needed to do it. And that fluidity of interaction with the data is terribly important, because otherwise you're just going to do what you did last year. And if there was ever a year when doing your previous year better was not the right thing, it would be the year that we've just gone through. If you did 2020 and congratulated yourself on having done a better version of 2019, I have a feeling that we all know that that's not really the accomplishment that was most needed. Another law, I've already talked about Conway's Law, less known is Goodhart's Law, which is that when a measure becomes a target, it stops being a good measure. That as soon as you set people a goal of achieving a certain numeric result, people are smart, people are adaptable, they will find a way to achieve the target that you told them to achieve, and you may not be happy with what actually results. If you tell your service department to get their call handle times down, they will. Calls will mysteriously be cut off at 59 seconds if you told people to keep call times under a minute. If you did, one of my favorite examples is this one. If I reward people for how many nails they produce, I'll get wire brads. If I reward them for how many pounds of nails they produce, I'll get railroad spikes. I can't build a house with either of those. And so it's very important to think hard about, am I measuring that which is easy to measure, or am I measuring that which is what I actually want to accomplish? Because there's a thing called streetlight effect, where you look for the data where it's easy to get, it's high quality, it's timely, but it may not be the data that's actually most meaningful to you. And so going and looking at what might be muddier and more expensive data may be essential to a transformation that achieves the kind of results you want. Because we're not transforming the customer experience, we're just doing more IT spending. And this is a reality. My friend Tom Davenport and his colleague Andrew Spagni did this piece for Sloan Management Review, looking across 4 industries, and found $5 trillion of spending on digital transformation that had only 1 in 5 customers saying that they felt that their experience had actually been changed. Customers can tell when your digital transformation is just getting them off of the phone and onto a website, or off of the phone and onto an app. They can tell when you're cutting your costs without actually improving their experience. They know the difference, and you're not just competing with other people who do what you do. You're competing against Netflix. You're competing against Amazon. You're competing against the standard of engagement, responsiveness, and delight and magic that people have learned they can have. And John Templeton, who used to be the world's superstar investor before Warren Buffett came along, was famous for his statement that the 4 most expensive words in the English language are "this time it's different," because any manner of idiocy can be disguised for a little while by people saying, "Oh, no, this time it's different. This time we've democratized access to this," or whatever. And sometimes the math just says, "No, I'm sorry, math still works." But in May, David Rubenstein at Carlyle Group said that the most expensive mistake you can make this year is failing to realize the degree to which this time it is different. We have 1,000 times the connective capacity that we had a decade ago. The computational power to extract insight from that data is also on an exponential curve. People have gone through a period of what Brian Solis has called becoming Generation N, novel coronavirus, where their digital engagement now is not merely inspired by their curiosity and their desire for entertainment, but by fear for their lives and the economic viability of their companies and the future of their children. And the intensity of that engagement has produced a step change in their expectations from you. The good news is that you are in an unusually good position to be able to give them that kind of an experience. You have the resources, you have the brand, you have the intellectual capability to do it. But as I hope I've indicated, the path of least resistance does not lead to transformation. The path of least resistance leads to incremental improvement and refinement of what you've done before. And this is a time when we need to step back and say, wait a minute, what are the outcomes we're being asked to achieve? What are the states of mind that our customer is asking us to help them arrive at? And how do we do that? And that's what I had brought to share with you today. And I don't mean to be negative, but I do mean to be providing what may be, guidance that's not as much fun as it would be, because you have to recognize that digital transformation only has 2 things wrong with it: the adjective and the noun. Digital makes it sound like technology adoption. Transformation makes it sound like going from one state to another state. And the idea that behavior change, challenging of cultural norms, redrawing your organization chart to reflect an emphasis on delivering an experience for your customer instead of a product or service that your engineers are expert in doing. These are now the greater challenges.
Peter,
thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us that last bit that really, again, this is just mind-boggling of where we haven't been yet in our discussions. So Vodafone Egypt, any questions for Peter before we close our day together and our week together? Because Peter's opened up some new ideas and thoughts that sort of mirror Brian's. So any questions?
And like Brian, my charts are not NDA material. You'll get a PDF of all of this stuff, and I would be very happy to have you share it with your teams or with others. My goal is to infect as many brains as I can.
Exactly. This was my next question. Would you share this piece of
Of course.
information?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I know it's the end of a long day for everyone in our in Egypt, and we want to honor your time. But I think Peter's brought up a very interesting point. Think back to what he said as you read his products, and then ask questions virtually. Get on email. We'll we'll find a way through Silicon Valley Innovation Center to make sure Peter doesn't get all the emails, but we get him some questions that come up, because as you deal with your projects, some of the things he warns us about and gives us advice about are going to pop back up again. And asking questions when you can is a fantastic method. Any questions in live right now that you want to ask before we close?
Thank you for the additional time. I'm glad that we were able to give the air we needed to the questions that arose. And yes, of course, Brian and I are both happy to follow up with you. Brian's indicated you'll get his material, and you will also be getting mine. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Peter. Enjoy the rest of your day. For all of our leaders at Vodafone Egypt, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much.
Been an exciting
And
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will
Bye.
see you guys
Everybody.
Thank
again.
you
Peter,
so
thanks
much.
again.
Module 4.
Thank you.
Masalama.
Bye.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Take care.